Seventh Assembly First Commitment called us to respond to the cry of Earth and its people made poor by embracing the Sustainable Development Goals in a human rights framework, addressing the issues of women and children, care of Earth and Indigenous peoples, as is relevant to our local regions. Following the creation of the 2020-22 strategy, Education and Action for Justice, which mirrors the commitments of the Assembly, the 2020 implementation plan of the strategy set out how we would respond to that call to the priority action areas. We decided to honour and advance these priorities on a local level as well as global, intersecting with our 2020-22 UN advocacy focus, elimination of violence against women and children. To enable the implementation of the priority actions, 3 focus groups were formed, comprising of justice contacts who named a chairperson.
The Women and Children Focus Group is represented by justice contacts in Australia, Papua New Guinea, Philippines, the United States of America, and Zimbabwe. However, the commitment to advancing the rights of women and children is a significant focus of the work of the IPA throughout the world. Since the 7th Assembly, the 2020 to 2022 Education and Action for Justice strategy has directed our efforts to honour and advance the rights of women and children. We strive to support women and children in vulnerable situations, listening to their stories, providing information, and referring them to appropriate agencies so that they are able to make informed decisions. This is evident in the response we provide to women and children experiencing gender-based violence and trafficking, to migrants fleeing violence and war, and to families impacted by natural disasters exacerbated by climate change. We have learnt that the work of the IPA is magnified through partnerships that we strengthen and the networks that we grow at both local and international levels. Our representative status at the United Nations draws on the experiences at the grassroots to amplify the centrality of gender equality to the advancement of the rights of women and children globally. We strive to improve access to learning for women and children around the world as we recognise that education is a key way to combat injustices that can severely impair lives. Education is a key element in the prevention of discrimination and violence against women and children. We strive to share a diverse range of information pertaining to injustices faced by women and children via a range of channels to ensure a far-reaching audience. We acknowledge, above all, the importance of women and children having equal access to information without prejudice. We strive to raise awareness about the injustices faced by women and children at the systemic level, locally, nationally, and globally, to educate our networks and wider society about its harmful impact on our modern world. Zoom, Facebook, and Instagram have enhanced communication within and between congregations, units, our justice partners. Using technology, we have been able to engage in collaborative online prayer services for International Women's Day. They have also enabled us to leverage our reach to the broader community locally, nationally, and internationally. Through our deeds and words, we carry on the legacy of Nano Nagel to shine a lantern on injustice everywhere and to be a voice for the forgotten and a voice for the voiceless.
A specific and long-held commitment of ours is to honour and advance the rights of the earth. And since the 7th Assembly, we have devoted some time in our focus group to exploring our ongoing work, to learning from each other, to inspire and to be inspired and motivated in how we work. Ours is a 2-feet approach, working and advocating for timely systemic change. Our commitments are grounded in respect and in the human rights of all people on our planet. We have learned from each other the effects of climate change and environmental degradation. We respond where we are locally, always conscious that our work can be an example to others to similarly respond to the cry of the earth. And when Laudato Si was published, we were affirmed in our long-held commitment to our Mother Earth. We were bolstered and encouraged to amplify the work and the voices of those affected first and affected most by climate change. During the Sydney Assembly, we were confronted by the devastation of Dominica by unrelenting hurricanes over the period of 1 week, a poor nation further challenged by human-induced natural disaster. Embracing the SDGs in Dominica helps to motivate, involve and educate, and we have engaged many in organic farming and empowering those who partake to become self-sufficient. In the Philippines, we work with children and Indigenous peoples, encouraging a simpler life and a respect for the season of creation. Much of what we do is based in communities where we have a school and we can easily reach out to others at home. Similarly, in Slovakia, working with Roma children who learn the touch of the soil, they experience the hope of planting, while those who are a little older take an active part in creation workshops. In Aberdeen, we learn of concerted advocacy efforts opposing the Keystone Pipeline, trampling the rights of Indigenous peoples in their efforts to care for our common home, while our sisters and friends in New Zealand are living out the call to live sustainably and tread softly upon this earth. More recently, our presentation sisters responded to the evolving humanitarian crisis in a very badly flooded Pakistan during the monsoon rains. Their ongoing work with Indigenous peoples helps to alleviate the worst effects of the floods whilst raising an awareness of the impending and unfolding disasters that are the result of climate change not caused by Indigenous people, but by those who have most in the Western world. By contrast to this, efforts to mitigate climate change are underway in Ireland, where Presentation Sisters have returned and restored 20 acres of natural bog to the earth, harvesting no more turf, allowing the bog to rest and regenerate, permitting biodiversity growth that sustains, and in doing so, becoming an example that should and must be followed. In North India, to mark the Indian Festival of Light, Diwali, the Presentation Convent School organised an eco-friendly competition for the students. Other work prompted students to campaign against firecrackers, to plant trees, to prepare projects on nature, and to come together for our planet and for all who live here. Australia, too, is now more prone to sudden climatic changes and has featured recently with both serious floods and fires. In Aaron's Earth, our presentation response continues to educate and engage all groups in matters that promote sustainability, recognise the rights of the earth, and encourage and inculcate a respect for these rights. These are our living IPA commitments. Our IPA commitments are living commitments, guided by the spirit and ethic of Nano that intersect and overlap with secular and scientific commitments, complemented and underpinned by the presentation SDG number 18, prayer.
The IPA focus group on Indigenous people is comprised of justice contacts based in the USA, Ireland, Slovakia, Pakistan and Thailand. Presentation people living and working among Indigenous and tribal groups hear their stories of historical exploitation and marginalisation, discerning with them what are their most basic needs and responding appropriately, whether it's among the Bajai community in the Philippines, Maoris in New Zealand, Aboriginal people in Australia, Indigenous groups in Papua New Guinea, tribal communities in Thailand, Pakistan, India, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Ecuador, Peru, Chile and Bolivia, or Roma people in Slovakia, or native Indian tribes of North America and Canada. They are committed to upholding the rights of these disadvantaged people through enabling lifelong learning, building awareness through partnerships with local elders and others to improve the lives of their Indigenous neighbours, promoting training and advocacy for civic representation, enabling their voices to be heard and to influence policy decisions which affect their lives. The IPA also advocates for the rights of Indigenous and tribal peoples at the United Nations. In April, it hosted an event during the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, focusing on the gendered impact of climate change, identifying further existing challenges and viable solutions to address discrimination and structured inequalities against Indigenous women and girls. Indigenous and tribal peoples seek equal opportunity, revival and understanding of their language, culture and customs, the right to own land, good housing and infrastructure, and legal acceptance of themselves as tribals. With presentation support, they continue to advocate for self-determination and representation in local and national governance structures. We have much to learn from tribal and Indigenous people who as a whole have always lived in harmony with creation, caring for 80% of our Earth's biodiversity. We also recognise that they have endured centuries of abuse, exploitation and exclusion, which still continue to this day. Some are denied citizenship cards and rights to land, and very often their efforts at seeking justice result in disappearances and murder of innocent protesters and human rights defenders. Our focus group posed a question. What would you ask of society and government with regard to your human rights and fair treatment? To quote a Filipino tribal group, "Please understand our culture and traditions, then make your judgments, rather than judging us without understanding who we are and what we are capable of. We are normal people like you, and like you, we deserve to be free and happy." A presentation lay associate and former teacher in Guatemala warns that the first step in being helpful is to realise and counter the danger of viewing their world through our own cultural lens. It is important too to acknowledge the pain caused by colonisation. For example, in Australia, Canada and the USA, presentation people network with others in highlighting the intergenerational impact of the tragic boarding school experiences on Aboriginal people and Native American Indians. Collaborating with lay colleagues, the Fargo Presentation Social Justice Collaborative works to revoke the doctrine of discovery, a 15th century papal edict, a legal framework which gave Christian governments moral and legal rights to invade and seize Indigenous lands and justify domination of Native American Indians. Earlier this year, Pope Francis urged governments and the international community to respect the dignity and rights of Indigenous peoples. He called for dialogue to reconvert Western power structures and transform historical relationships marked by colonialism and exclusion.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak at the 61st session of the UN Commission for Social Development. My name is Despina Milaki and I am the UN representative for the International Presentation Association. I'm delivering this statement.
In early 2020, through a highly participatory and consultative process, the IPA directors, the core team, and the Justice Contacts identified the elimination of violence against women and children as the most appropriate specific UN advocacy focus. In this framework, here at the UN, each October, we engage in the 11 Days of Action campaign, celebrating the UN International Day of the Girl. IPA, being an active member of the Working Group on Girls, speaks out for empowered girls as changemakers who can accelerate progress in their communities and build a stronger future for all. IPA girls from India, Thailand, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and the Philippines submitted their videos and artwork to the Working Group on Girls, contributing to the conversation about girls' human rights around the globe.
Preamble, I would like to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to stand before you all as girls and also to stand on behalf of each and every girl.
Let me set forth the authenticity.
Hi, my name is Sinutinda Murisa, and I'm from Zimbabwe.
Furthermore, every year we actively engage in the 16 Days of Activism International campaign that kicks off on November 25th, the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. We submit written statements for the annual sessions of both the UN Commission on the Status of Women and the UN Commission for Social Development, focusing on the intersections of gender-based violence with various aspects of each priority theme, and stressing our advocacy points to the UN officers and mechanisms. Additionally, we host events at the UN level on various aspects of gender-based violence, joined by distinguished speakers like ambassadors, high-ranking national officials, UN officers, civil society leaders, and academia, and of course, gender-based violence survivors. We in the IPA consider formal and informal education as a powerful tool, not only in responding to and advocating against violence, but also in dismantling gender stereotypes, hence preventing violence from occurring before it even starts. With that in mind, we have developed a practical booklet as a guiding document which provides information and tools to be used by anyone who works in the elimination of violence. We use reliable data to inform evidence-based advocacy points. In this framework, we have conducted 2 research projects. The monumental impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on entrenching gender roles and patterns of gender-based violence was the pressing reason for the first IPA publication, titled Making Uncomfortable Conversations Comfortable: Gender Stereotypes and Domestic Violence in India, United States, and Zimbabwe, which was published in April 2022 and launched during an online event in May 2022. Our particular interest placed in providing a voice to women at the grassroots level located in the 3 IPA countries and experiencing gender stereotypes and domestic violence. The second IPA publication, titled Policies for Gender Justice: Practices in Addressing Domestic Violence and Gender Stereotypes, which was launched during an online event in January 2023, placed a particular focus on policy responses addressing domestic violence and gender stereotypes by the governments and NGOs in India, United States, and Zimbabwe.
Each of these priority action areas is not isolated from the others. We keep them all in our minds and hearts as we work towards our vision of a world in which the oneness and sacredness of all life is honoured.